Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen from all around the globe. I'm delighted to co-chair this event. I'm Osama Al-Ansari, with me Faisal Al-Fadl, chair of the side event hosted by the Saudi Green Building Forum. Welcome to The Honest Voice, Bridging the Gap, Climate, Sustainability, and Resource Efficiency, ensuring health, safety, and the environment, sustainable and resilient recovery from the COVID-19. Today, the international community, member states, representatives, expert speakers, youth, and NGOs will testify with their best knowledge on ways to go forward on the expression, the honest voice. Bridge the gap between empowerment and sustainability, ensuring health, safety, and the environment post-COVID-19. Delegates will present collaborative solutions to cover longer-term priorities for the future we want by recognizing 193 member states' volunteer national reports. COVID-19 has impacted nearly all areas of human life, natural resources, and the implementation of sustainable development goals. The Honest Voice encourages strengthening the science policy interface, building civil community resilience through empowering education, health and safety, just systems by multi-sectoral and cross-disciplinary actions. This virtual side event, HLPF 2021, hosted by Saudi Green Building Forum, is an open discussion and presents engagement of all stakeholders, leaving no one behind, to bridge the gap between public and private sectors' role in achieving SDGs. Our first session will shed the light on natural resources, Goal 12, 13, and 17. Inclusive society, Goal 3, 10, and 16. Prosperity assurance, Goal 1, 2, and 8. The driving force of the global social economy and environment that rests on our very existing future in a way that continues to have disruptive impacts on the planet if not checked. For the opening remarks, I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Faisal Al-Fadl, Secretary General of Saudi Green Building Forum. He's an architect, volunteer, and community builder in full capacity for the planet's future. Mr. Faisal, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Co-Chair Osama. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody, everywhere you are. Dear honorable speakers and distinguished delegates, no doubt the Honest Voice energizes the international community for sustainability pathways. Today, the Arab region of the West Asia shares a common language, culture, religion, and is divided into three clusters falling into two continents, two hemispherics, and a border of 5 oceans and seas. Covering around 14 million square kilometers, the region covers 9% of Earth's total land area, with over 350 million people, of which 56% live in urban areas. Confronted today by extreme climate, limited natural resources, economic conditions, and conflict, the environmental challenges are striking. Our review of the issues today bridge the gap as it relates to the work being the honest voice for empowerment, from empowerment to sustainability. I am very grateful to more than 5,000 volunteer professionals and experts believe in us, who believe also that independent procedures are inclusive in facing challenges. The highlight of the gap between empowerment and sustainability to achieve desired environmental goals and rebuilding green resilience and long-lasting prosperity. There is no doubt bridging the gap ensures a comprehensive recovery that addresses inequality, and adapting consumption and production induces a sustainable future from one generation to the next. Women, youth, and citizens are the essential component of cross-cutting issues in promoting sustainable development goals. We understand that our priorities for the future we want, the global citizen we are, by addressing the green responsible actions, supporting global green economy alignment, commitment to value chain approach to food, construction, and textile, solidarity of regional and urban cities, supporting places affected by the current crisis, emphasizes on continuous quality education for health, safety, and the environment, the built environment. The gap that is a way improving forward requires proposition, expectations, and policy recommendations. We call on the international community to set up an applicable framework and a fair performance indicators mechanism for education and health safety and the environment in a way that supports building the capacity of civil society. The science-based policy action on sustainability, consumption, and production is essential. Ensuring full, equal, and meaningful participation, representing, and leadership in economic empowerment. Access to finance, decent work, equal pay, and social security bridge the gap. Would request investing in artificial intelligence, tools, and fair data collection. By enhancing data gaps and time lags in the official statistics needed for future or for further investment in building capacity for sustainable development goals. Therefore, disclosing of the impact on climate change, unveiling natural resources and demographics, realizing data preventions from well-being with an emphasis on universal health coverage, addressing population, expansion of housing and malnutrition in cities, rural areas, and remote areas. Emphasizes the international community for sustainable pathways, bridging the gap. A way moving forward requires proposition, expectations, and policy recommendations. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to address you today. Back to you.
Thank you indeed, Mr. Faisal, our keynote speaker. We have a keynote speaker now who will be speaking about the recovery process, which presents us with a unique opportunity of rebuilding better that must avoid the pitfalls of the past to restore the balance between humanity and Mother Nature and create a culture of peace. Ms. Kishan Basso is an NGO advocate, youth champion, regional partner of North America, founder and president of Green Hope Foundation. The floor is yours for 3 minutes. Please adhere to the time. Thank you indeed, Ms. Basso.
Thank you very much. Good morning from Toronto, Canada. My name is Kahkasha, and I'm wearing purple today to show solidarity with my fellow feminists at the high-level political forum to ensure a transition to a just economy. Now, the world is in the midst of the greatest crisis in living memory, a microscopic virus that has brought the world to its knees, leaving behind even the mightiest and most technologically advanced nations, leaving them gasping literally and figuratively for succor and relief. And while the vaccine rollout is a faint light in a tunnel whose end is yet out of sight, it has brought forth a stark realization that of how puny and ineffective humanity still remains in the face of nature. And the irony of the situation is the fact that what began as a healthcare issue has now morphed into a humanitarian crisis that has created a lack of peace, bringing about unspeakable and disproportionately severe suffering on the weak and the vulnerable, exacerbating inequalities within marginalized communities, most of which populate the nations of the global south that are already affected by climate change, social inequities, and economic instability. So there is now an overwhelming consensus to adopt multilateralism, move away from the mistakes of the past, and rebuild better through collaboration, taking cognizance of the fact that we are almost running out of natural resources, and unless we consume with care, an environmental apocalypse is a certainty which will destroy any chance we have of creating a peaceful world. However, we have the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and 169 targets to provide us with a clear blueprint for action. It's imperative that we recognize its interlinkages and take ground level actions to implement them. At Green Hope Foundation, this has been our mantra on which our advocacy and grassroots actions are based. And working across 25 countries within communities severely impacted by COVID and climate change and focusing on the localization of the SDGs, we at Green Hope Foundation are building resilience through the creation of local circular bioeconomies that are helping to reestablish the symbiotic relationship that these communities previously held with their environment, thereby creating a culture of peace and a healthy environment for all where they can all live sustainably. The road to recovery has to begin with those who are the farthest first. And as young people and young women, the onus is on us to change the status quo so that we can build a just, equitable, and sustainable world where no one is left behind and everyone has a life of dignity. Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed, and thank you also for adhering to the time. Thank you, Ms. Basso. And our next keynote speaker will be speaking about circular carbon economy to address climate sustainability. Mr. Aldo Flores is an expert of energy and foreign policy, senior advisor, writer of Mexican trade and energy policy, former Secretary General of International Energy Forum, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Mr. Aldo, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm, first of all, extremely happy and honored to participate in this very important and interesting event. I thank you very much for allowing me to share some of my views on the challenge of sustainability. And what I would like to underscore is that by now, I think we have a very good idea and well identified what are the objectives that we should be pursuing for achieving the global sustainability goals that have been already presented in many different fora and through the years. And I think the key challenge right now is to think more thoroughly about the politics and the policy that will make this shift much more likely. So my concern here with the conversation is that we are focusing on high-level objectives, but if we want to make them happen, we need to craft the political roadmap, the political space for the effective change to happen. It's not the first time that we're talking about this subject over the last at least 15 years since the SDG goals were announced and since the 2030 agenda for sustainable development was launched. And we have yet to make substantive progress. Some of the complications do come from the pandemic, and it's part of the discussion nowadays. But I think that mustering the political will, achieving the political agreements to make effective change will require much more creative thinking. The circular carbon economy is a four-pronged way to get to different types of agreements in order to move forward to an economy that is much more sustainable and, of course, friendly with the environment. I first heard of the concept because of the leadership of Saudi Arabia in the G20, and I now think that it is becoming much more established as part of the conversation. But if you think about the concept, we need to do more to reduce the use of energy, to reuse what we have, to recycle what we've been using, and to find a way to capture what has been the carbon that has been released into the atmosphere, to remove that carbon. All that means, all that challenge goes beyond technology. It requires long-term, consistent policy, credible policy in order to move forward. And that's where the role of activists, for example, what we just heard, will be very useful in accomplishing that type of objective. One last thing I would like to add is that there is no way forward without transparent, efficient pricing of energy products and certainly fossil fuels. The lack of conservation or low efficiency that in many parts of the world we see responds to the subsidies that we're seeing for fossil fuel, the absence of taxes on carbon in the case of the objective to reduce emissions. And this is a fundamental component of the solution, and it is perhaps the most difficult components. Governments have a very difficult time increasing the prices of energy, and to insist we will need a way, a political path in order to get there. And the problem is, or the challenge is, that we're talking, if only about the UN, of over 190 countries with very different political configurations that will have to find a way to move forward in this space. So I leave this as my opening remarks and very much looking forward to the next speakers, listening to them, and any conversation thereof.
Thank you indeed, Aldo. The COVID crisis has made clear the connection between human health and the health of our natural ecosystems. June 5th marked the launch of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, a crucial moment to focus collaboration across sectors and between nations in order to restore our planet for local resilience and for our collective fight against global climate change. About that, Ms. Clara Rawi will be speaking to us, and she is a sustainable leader with decade of experiment in the natural resources, CEO of Restore, alumni at Yale School of the Environment. Please go ahead, Ms. Clara.
Thank you so much for having me. Good evening from Zurich in Switzerland. One of the countless and painful lessons that COVID-19 and the crisis around it has brought to light is the deep connection between health, the health of our communities and the health of natural ecosystems. And it's not a new lesson for the world, but it has become more tangible to many of us as a global disease brings words like zoonotic spillover into the mainstream. This year, as was mentioned on June 5th, marked the launch of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. And it was really a moment to recognize all of the incredible work that's happening every day to restore Earth's ecosystems, and also a reminder of how far we need to go still. Restoration has the potential to draw down about 30% of accumulated global carbon emissions, and it's a key component of many climate mitigation goals for nations by 2030. And it's also really important for local resilience. That might mean buffering coastlines from worsening storms. It might mean building more drought-resistant agricultural systems. But to reach this potential requires thoughtful and concerted collaboration across sectors and also between nations. And in the end, a fundamental shift in terms of how we value the nature that sustains every aspect of our lives, including health. So June 5th was an invitation for everyone to join the restoration movement. It was also an unspoken plea: join the restoration movement or else. June 5th also marked the launch of the new organization that I now run, Restore. And Restore is an open data platform with ecological insights built to enable and accelerate the global restoration movement to restore Earth's ecosystems. It's a home for everyone who's already engaged in restoration and everyone who's searching for a way to engage. And maybe most importantly, it's a place for connection. So today, Restore houses tens of thousands of restoration and conservation sites around the world. And every day since June 5th, I've started my mornings by exploring one new site, one place on Earth where someone or actually more often a group of interconnected people, are working to bring back life to a piece of land. I really love looking at these sites. I explore the satellite imagery that tells a story of change over time, and I scroll through the lists of native tree and shrub species for a region. I'll look at the graphs of carbon accumulated in those spaces, and I read the description that each of those projects share about their goals, their successes, their challenges. My invitation to each of you and the organizations you represent is to do the same way in some way, because each of you and each of us has a role to play in the restoration movement. And it starts by rooting ourselves in why. Why do we restore? For the health of people and planet, and also in the where. And that's really those myriad places and communities where we're already coming together to restore Earth's ecosystems. So thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you indeed, Clara. Dear Chair, we should start on natural resources session now. Let's go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I'm really, going back to the honor speakers. There's no doubt a recovering process, as well policy oriented, as Professor Aldo said, that is essential to our recovery. But really, the tools that, as was explained by Ms. Clara, that we need the tools. So the tools are there, and I hope we come into this first session with a fresh eye into looking into the climate sustainability and resources efficiency. So here I have really two major questions. For the natural resources transformation, consumption, production, and addressing mitigation for climate change, specifically for the SDG number 12 on responsible consumption, and the goal number 13 on climate action, as well as the number 17, which is all about partnership. So we will be leaving with two questions with the next set of speakers coming out of from what the keynote speakers have addressed, the necessary for going forward. So the question one is, how realization of the preventions and health with emphasis on universal value chain can we achieve those goals? That's question number one. Question number two, when addressing the impact of climate change and even natural disaster, how essential is that for us to move forward? So back to you, Co-Chair.
Thank you indeed. In this session, we have Mr. Haytham Askar and Mr. Sigini Park and Ms. Sara Zahiri. Mr. Haytham Askar is an expert contributor to the UK Parliamentary Office of Science and Technology on Sustainability and a professor of the University of Northampton and London Law and Business. Please go ahead, Mr. Haytham. I'm sorry, Haytham, yes.
I'm a
sorry.
professor at the University of Northampton, also the University School London of International. Now, the thing is regulating product sustainability. Now, recently, the UK, the EU, they had to go and try to use something called catch-up with regulation in the EU. Hence, there was about a year ago, within the COVID, they assimilated a group of specialists, and I'm honored to be one of them, 25 who worked on something called regulating product sustainability using life cycle assessment. Now, we've been asked to come up with two things. First of all, a methodology, a scientific methodology that would comply not just the UK, but also can be expanded to the rest of the countries. So that can be put as a framework that would govern the product transfer between the UK and Europe, and also between the UK and the rest of the world. Now, we had to go into something called verification of the normal low carbon analysis type of methodology, which is more or less works. I mean, we have to add more, which we normally work with energy, water, and waste input to have more, let's say, output material interaction. We have to put more into production process and verify that coming to the UK and also to the rest of Europe, and also distribution methods, and also use pattern, and also disposal method, which is a normal from cradle to grave type methodology. Now, in the circular economy, the main, I mean, it was more or less the methodology of the framework that we did worked on, we call it white paper. So we sent a lot of questions, a lot of surveys to most of the industry and other things to double check their input on how they see product sustainability. And then apart from the next step is to take it to, we call it a PIN, which we call parliamentary note, that will be taken to the parliament, that will be changed afterwards to legislation. And that would impact the way that we govern, how we can quantify, and I put that between brackets, the product sustainability, and how we can make sure that the emission that, which is basically linked to the product coming to the country, are contained. And that would mean working with the host, or working with the I would say export countries. Should it be in Asia? Should it be in Africa? That we're making sure that the product, which are, we call it raw cooked, half cooked, will not have additional emissions attached to it when they come to the UK. Because at the end of the day, if you get a process, if you get something which is half cooked, like iron ore, or could be cottonwood type of trees or whatever, they already have emission attached to it within the process of when it's coming from. So we have to making sure that we have those countries that we deal with on par with what we're doing. Now, one of the main things that also we have to go and upgrade our own laws within the UK to making sure that at the moment, because of the cycle of the circular economy, it's not just basically making sure that we have a recycling or disposable or that sort of thing, but reuse again. And we found that there are gaps within what we're doing. So we're trying to come to that. Now, going back to one of the things that Engineer Faisal has touched on, which is climate change. The climate change for us is not just emission based, is business continuity, is the whole aspect of climate change, and hazardous type of impact. Should it be environment, should be other things as well. I suppose that's what I can say within 5 minutes.
How can we heal this earth before it becomes too late? Now is the time to take civic actions. Climate change and depletion of natural resources are involved. To us will speak Mr. Sigin Park. He's an architect and urban planner, president of the American Institute of Architects in Japan. 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
I'd like to thank the Saudi Green Building Forum for giving me the opportunity to be part of this discussion. How can we heal this earth before it becomes too late? Now is the time to take civic actions to counteract the temperature rise and manage the natural resources for our families and future generations. Green buildings, natural ventilation, open spaces, green waste, zero emission transportation options, and low waste communities have been adopted to reduce carbon dioxide. However, all these solutions are not enough to achieve the truly sustainable environment. A balance between appropriate sustainable design, economic feasibility, and civic support is critical for sustainability. If those three are falling apart, then sustainability will not last long. For instance, to counterbalance the urban heat vegetation is a popular choice for positive effect of nature. But if too many trees are planted, such densely vegetated area will attract people, but also a considerable number of undesirable insects like mosquitoes. Can pesticides be sprayed in the worst case scenario? The whole purpose of providing vegetation is to retrieve healthy environment. When vegetation is introduced, we need to consider its impacts to the existing ecosystem holistically for a long term. The appropriateness of a sustainable solution and social preference are not necessarily consistent. Sustainability is tangible as long as it is economically viable. There is a misconception that sustainable design is costly. However, it is eventually economical in the long run. Indigenous materials cost less and consume less gas for transportation. and that they are more durable. Solar panels add cost initially, but save the operational costs. Those decisions are small to make. Sustainable design can be therefore adapted to any project type, regardless of size and budget. In fact, there is still room to make a sustainable design more affordable. Supportive policies such as the incentives for sustainable property development will allow sustainable design accessible to anyone and will consequently help to create high demand for low impact materials and high performance systems. In the industry, there will be more competitions for the technology development potential of new technologies and more job opportunities. Those will boost economy in the end. Sustainability is difficult to survive without civic support. Each day, architects and urban planners do their best to help clients better understand not only the cost effectiveness of a sustainable design, but also the imperative to utilize renewable resources for every building and urban planning in order to regain the healthy environment for our and future generations' health and well-being. Perhaps the civic support is the most important because it can be a great momentum to promote sustainability. In conclusion, appropriate sustainable design, economic feasibility, and civic support are essential for sustainability. Especially civic support is indispensable for promoting sustainability. When an individual begins to take the first action to change, it could be very small. However, even such a small action as a flap of butterflies' wings may set off a gust of wind that sways public opinion. Hopefully, high winds can finally blow the heat off, taking us to the truly sustainable world. Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed, Mr. Park. Thank you indeed. And now, ladies and gentlemen, with the Sahel region experienced conflict brought about by climate change, a major concern for the three countries' interest in peace and stability due to conflict among the residents for food interception. And now she will speak to us, Ms. Sara Al-Zahiri. She's a professor at King Saud University. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, let me first thank the Saudi Green Building Forum for hosting this virtual high-level political forum. It's an honor to address the high political forum. It is now time to act on the 2030 agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals, especially in the affected areas such as the Sahel region concerning climate work. The Sahel region is a transitional eco-climatic and geographic region, zone between the Sahara and North Sudanian savanna to the south. The drought is getting higher by 1.5 times quicker than the rest of the globe. And the extent of the attention paid to the security climate change debate in recent years may be seen in a variety of policy papers, debates, and also in international and national community. These studies elevated climate change to the level of international policymaking by identifying it as a major danger to national and global stability. The Sahel region has experienced conflict brought about by climate change. Climate changes in the region is a major concern for the three country borders, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, and the other countries that have an interest in the peace and stability of the Sahel region. One of the major results of the adverse climate change in the region has been inefficient food for the Sahel residents. Between 2016 and 2020, the region had an average of 8 million people who severely food insecure in March and May, and 12 million people in June and August, according to OECD. The climate change had led to the conflict among the residents for food, which is found in limited quantity in the Sahel. To solve the issue, various local authorities of the Sahel region need to come up with an initiative aimed fairly and equally allocating land for agriculture use among the Sahel residents. It's affecting the residents and causing communal disputes. In order to solve the land disputes, all the African states surrounding the Sahel region need to sit down and come up with a clear solution meant to solve the land disputes. One of the solutions to this dispute is by using border control to the movement of the people within three countries in the Leptocoma-Grama triangle. Various regional, continental, and foreign organizations, including the G5 Sahel, African Union, and the United Nations, have heavily invested in the region finance and manpower, as the three countries in that area have continued to confront the militias' extremism, inter-community warfare, coups, and climate change, both of which have severely harmed the Sahel peace and stability. Also, to increase understanding of the linkage and impact of the climate change and security, and how climate change can contribute to insecurity in the future. The Sustainable Development Goals are more than just a method to fix what has been damaged. They will set the world on a new, more sustainable path. They serve as the guide to the world that we want. It will make a lot of effort, but this is the most important duty for our time and global. Thank you.
Thank you indeed, Ms. Sara Al-Dhahiri, an international volunteer and a youth leader. She also works for the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC. Dear Chair, how about we start on inclusive society?
Of course, I think thank you for the speakers, whether Dr. Professor Heath. He talked about the product sustainability and the new life cycle proposal, and also from the design point of view and the architecture and the professional approach to solving these kind of questions that we addressed earlier on the resources. Also, I think it's one of the fantastic example was brought by Ms. Sara. Sahel, or the Sahel region, if many people know, it's the area that between in the middle of South Africa. It's really it's a challenge to humanity and Earth. Now I would like to go to the second session, which is inclusive society, building more on peaceful, equal, and inclusive society, which deals specifically on the goal 3, which is health, as well as well-being, reducing inequality, the goal number 10, as well number 16, which is all about peace, justice, and strong institutions. So the questions are left open to everybody to think about with the next upcoming speakers, that ensuring health, safety, and the environment that requires, first of all, how could we ensure full, equal, and meaningful participation, representation and leadership between women, men, at all levels. Also, the other question would be how to ensure partnership, ending all form of violence and harmful practices that impacts the SDGs. So, to you.
Indeed, Mr. Chair. Volunteers' contribution to protecting the environment. That's the title. Mr. Karim Sharida from the United Nations Volunteering Online Service, Arab States, will be speaking to us about. Go ahead, please. 3 minutes. Thank you indeed.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to speak about a subject that is very dear to my heart, which is the environment. And also, I will take this opportunity to offer all of you and your organization the support you need to protect the environment. So as the host and the co-chair and many of the honorable speakers here with us today said in their speech that the pandemic has deeply affected the environment, either positively with the reduction of emission from factories or a restriction of movement, or maybe negatively with the disposal of hazardous medical equipment, or because of the unregulating opening of factory. We in the United Nations Volunteer Program believe that the key ingredient to achieve the 2030 Sustainable Development Goal is volunteers. You know, volunteers are the first to respond to any environmental harm in their communities. They provide environmental restoration, waste collection and recycling, and educating others about the national environment. In 2000, UNV launched a digital platform to connect volunteers from all over the world with the UN agencies to work together and to support each other in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And in the year of 2020, the number of registered online volunteers reached to over 650,000 online volunteers from all over the world. And in the same year, in 2020, we received over 68,000 online volunteering applications to support our partners. Also in the same year, in 2020, we decided to give access to all public institutions and NGOs who are working to achieve the 2030 agenda. And not only that, we also offer the service completely free of charge to all our registered partners. So whoever support the 2030 agenda can come register to the platform and benefit from our services. We are glad to have supported almost all UN agencies who are working in the environmental programs, and also we are partners, and we are proud to be partner with the Saudi Green Building Forum to help them in their activities. Thank you so much for giving me this time. Over to you.
Thank you indeed, Mr. Karim. Leading a change in a way consistent with the post-pandemic and economic identity. Ms. Lina Al-Gahtani will be speaking to us, and she's a Saudi woman entrepreneur and Vice President of the National Committee for Entrepreneurship. Ms. Lina, the floor is yours. 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. بالبداية أتقدم لمنتدى الأبنية الخضراء، المنتدى السعودي للأبنية الخضراء بخالص الشكر لإتاحة هذه الفرصة لنا أو لي للمشاركة والمساهمة في هذه الكلمة. ثاني أمر، يسعدني أن أقدم الكلمة باللغة العربية تماشيا مع رؤية مع المحور الخاص بالعمق العربي الإسلامي لرؤية 2030. لعلي أبدأ مقدمة بسؤال بسيط يتبادر للأذهان في ظل جائحة 2030 المتعلقة في الجلسة الثانية لجلستنا اليوم، هي كيف يتم بناء مؤسسات فعالة على جميع المستويات تتسم بالقدرة على تحقيق القيمة العادلة بكل مكوناتها الاقتصادية والاجتماعية، مع إمكانية دعم الأهداف المتعلقة أو الأهداف العالمية. الهدف رقم 3 الصحة الجيدة والرفاهية، والهدف 10 معالجة عدم المساواة بين الجنسين في ظل إدارة هذه الأزمة. ببدأ في الهدف 16 لأنه المؤسسات القوية التي ستتسم بالقدرة على إدارة التغيير أو قيادة هذا التغيير بما يحقق الهدفين المذكورين هي الإشارة القوية اللي تم الإدراك من خلالها بأن لابد من ضرورة وجود نماذج معرفية تساند على بناء مؤسسي في البداية، والبناء المؤسسي هذا اللي ينتج عنه مؤسسات قوية قادرة على تحقيق هذه القيمة العادلة بما يدير العلاقة بشكل منطقي ما بين عوائد وأثر الهدفين، الصحة والرفاهية ومعالجة عدم المساواة. من هنا تم إدراك ضرورة ابتكار أو ضرورة أهمية ابتكار النماذج المعرفية التي تتسم بقدرتها على إدارة الابتكار والإبداع والمعرفة وفق معايير تحقيق أهداف التنمية المستدامة العالمية، وبما يتماشى مع الهوية الاقتصادية المستقبلية للمملكة. جاء دور القطاع الخاص أو جاء دور الأعضاء المشاركين في بعض اللجان الوطنية واللي أنا أمثل أحدهم بصفتي نائب رئيس اللجنة الوطنية التنفيذية لريادة الأعمال وعضو المجلس التنسيقي للمرأة وفي المسار الاقتصادي. بسعى إلى تأسيس أول شركة متخصصة في تصميم وبناء الهوية الاقتصادية للأفراد والمؤسسات بما يتماشى مع الهوية الاقتصادية المستقبلية للمملكة. بلا شك بأن من أهم ما تتضمن الهوية الاقتصادية أو السلوك الاقتصادي هو دمج الأهداف أو القدرة على تحقيق القيمة العادلة بما يتماشى مع دمج الأهداف. هذا الأمر أو آلية دمج الأهداف ودمج المقاصد المستقبلية في السلوك الحالي لقيادة التغيير كان تحدي جدا كبير مواجه جميع القطاعات أو المجتمعات المؤسسية بكل مستوياتها باختلاف مساراتها الحكومية والخاصة والمدنية. وفخورة بأننا قدرنا نتوصل إلى ابتكار بعض النماذج المعرفية اللي تساهم أو تزيد في مساهمة تحقيق الأهداف التنمية المستدامة العالمية وبتتماشى مع تحقيق أهداف رؤية 2030 وتدعم أو بتدعم توجيه سواء يعني سلوك المؤسسات اللي واجهت التحدي في خلال إدارة هذه الجائحة أو في ظل هذه الجائحة بشأن تحقيق عدم المساواة بين الجنسين، لأن كان من أكثر التحديات اللي تواجهت جميع المنشآت هو الاستمرارية على تحقيق هذا الهدف في ظل إدارة هذه الأزمة. أيضا بكون أن الوباء أو الأزمة هي أزمة تمس الصحة، كان أيضا من أهم التحديات أو أعظمها هو قدرة المؤسسات على استمرارية تحقيق هدف الصحة والرفاهية في ظل إدارة هذه الأزمة، وهذا ما كان له ضرورة الابتكار. أشكر لكم جميعا هذا الوقت وتحياتي للجميع.
Go ahead, Ms. Hissa. The mic is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Osama, for your kind introduction. Good morning and good evening, everyone. Dear Chair, Mr. Faisal Al-Fadl, Secretary General of Saudi Green Building Forum, honorable keynote speaker and colleagues. Today and every day, our interest, knowledge, and implementation are racing for sustainable development goals. Finding ways to express our voice, bridging the gap is not an easy job. Now it's our time. Tomorrow is today. Representing youth is testimony to all volunteers working together, expanding a global Saudi Green Building Forum efforts, supported by United Nations volunteers are rewarding. More than 500 volunteers participated globally, awarded 100 certificates of appreciation, including 10 of SDGs tasks, expressing passion and contribution throughout the world is our collective testimony of good global citizen. In the midst of the experiment, I sought to find the gap that hinder those interested in achieving and sustaining the objective of goals. Organization and civil society advising the concept, methodologies, and application of the Sustainable Development Goals. So many benefits and good opportunities for all of us in gaining support, attracting volunteers, and building capacity. How can volunteers be effective as leading member of their community? Dear international community, it's our honest voice is to bridge the gap in the midst of the experience through which I sought to find what hindered those interested in achieving and sustaining the SDGs goals. First of all, lack of awareness. The gap of the volunteering missions and realization of actions being one of the most challenging resources at the local national and community level. Lack of support, the critical barriers between volunteers and desirability to work, exclusion based on the social norms, legal and political discrimination, corruption, insecurity, crime, insufficient skill. Dear fellow volunteers, my experience, your rewarding experience, demonstrates the various challenging in understanding the basic idea of diversity in culture, language, and volunteer needs. Training, the governments must line up in parallel to develop volunteers for sustainable activities while considering human resources and people-centered approach to be relevant to the labor market. Investment, youth volunteer contribution is the best practice in developing the labor market. Motivation, everyone in the community deserves the chance to represent their nation in many ways, sharing their successful story as a speaker or representative in the international platform. As being the honest voice, we ask to conclude the following recommendation: empowering member states, civil societies, and leaders in the space responsibility of the United Nations play a key role in promoting voluntary environmental engagement, partnership, and solidarity. Sustainability. The volunteering culture institution can create a bridge between gap development outcome and people's benefit, that of the influence in the decision making, building on the foundation of the solidarity, cooperation, and mutual equality. I am grateful to you and my country, Saudi Arabia, of 63,000 volunteers supporting the health sector, delivering a strong message, those making crucial contribution in dealing with the pandemic years to come. Thank you very much for everyone to joining us today.
Thank you indeed, Hissa. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we shall start the third session, Prosperity Assurance session. Dear Chair, please go ahead.
Of course, thank you for the speakers. I think it's very obvious that volunteering contribution, it becomes an essential part of moving forward in this session, as well as the leading chance in leading the opportunity for the post-pandemic in terms of economic identity, as Ms. Lina was saying. There is no doubt that volunteering system sustain empowerments. For that, thank you for the speakers, and now we go to the session number 3, which is sustainable and resilience recovery for post-COVID-19. I would like to leave recovery. So to leave you guys with the two questions on how can we realize the right and the basics of a human, the basics, housing, human needs, and social security by supporting the goals, whether it's housing or food or construction. Now, the second question would be interesting to raise to everybody: when, how, and where to ensure economic empowerment, access to finance, decent work, equal pay, with regard to underrepresented opportunities such as science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So thank you.
Underrepresented, yes. Thank you indeed. Our first speaker for this session is going to speak about supporting civil societies for decent work and economic growth. As a woman who believes in developmental and academic role, belong to one of the most prominent civil society organizations to invest, experience, and understand role and work systematically in sustainable development, contribute as a citizen to advancing the national transformation and the vision of Prosperity 2030. Ms. Majida Al-Qadhi, she's a consultant of sustainable development in the field of family economics, specialist of human development planning. She's a partnership leader at the Saudi Green Building Forum in consultative status with United Nations ECOSOC. Ms. Majida Al-Qadhi, تفضلي المايك لك. حياك الله.
شكرا أستاذ أسامة، أو شكرا لوجود الجميع. أنا حقيقي جدا مبسوطة اليوم ومبسوطة بتشابه الأصوات الصادقة. طيب، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سعادة رئيس الفعالية المصاحبة للمنتدى السياسي رفيع المستوى المعني بأهداف التنمية المستدامة، المهندس فيصل الفضل، الأمين العام للمنتدى السعودي للأبنية الخضراء. أصحاب السعادة، الإخوة والأخوات الكرام، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يشرفني أن أشارك اليوم وكل يوم الاهتمام بالتنمية المستدامة، ويسعدني أن أتيحت لي الفرصة في هذا المحفل الدولي الكبير للتعبير عن صوتي وامتناني لما تقومون به من جهود ملموسة. ومن منطلق تسليط الضوء على المحور الثالث، التعافي المستدام بعد جائحة كوفيد-19، المتعلق بشكل مباشر بالهدف الأول لا فقر، والثاني صفر الجوع، والثامن العمل اللائق والنمو الاقتصادي. نحن نقدر حجم هذه المسؤولية جدا ونتضامن للعمل عليها، ونتفهم أهمية التداول وفق البروتوكولات الدولية وأخلاقيات المهن وما أقرته البيانات الرسمية الوطنية وضرورة مواكبتها. ولكوني امرأة مؤمنة بدوري وواجبي التنموي والأكاديمي في الحياة، انتميت لأحد أبرز منظمات المجتمع المدني المهتمة بهذا النهج، لأستثمر خبرتي وأتفهم دوري وأعمل بشكل منهجي في التنمية المستدامة، وبما يتوافق مع البيانات الرسمية الوطنية لأساهم كمواطنة في دفع عجلة التحول الوطني ورؤية الازدهار 2030 نحو الأمام. السيد الرئيس، الإخوة والأخوات الكرام، في خضم التجربة التمست وجودي فجوة تعيق المهتمين من تحقيق مقاصد الأهداف واستدامتها، ذلك لأن المنظمة عندما تكون هي أيضاً لديها نقص في مواردها المحققة لها الهدف الأول والثاني والثامن، كيف سيكون أداؤها؟ لذا أرجو أن يتم تخيل المأمول عندما نتأمل هذا الواقع. إذا كان المبدأ أن العالم كل واحد والدول تشكل أجزاءه، ولكن عندما اتصلت هذه الأجزاء من خلال الالتزام باتفاقية أجندة 2030 لتحقيق أهداف التنمية المستدامة، انفصلت عن دعم المنظمات رفيعة المستوى ذات الطموح الوطني. إذن ما هو تصوركم هنا؟ وماذا لو استمرت المنظمات رفيعة المستوى تقوم بدورها الوطني الطموح من خلال أعضائها وهي مفتقدة للدعم ولآلية تعاون منهجية بين المجموعات الرئيسية وأصحاب المصلحة؟ كيف سيكون توقعكم هنا عن الجهد المبذول ومدى القدرة على حفظ الاستمرارية والتقدير؟ وما هي التوقعات في حالة تم قرار اختيار الدعم الأمثل لتحقيق التطوير التنموي واستثمار الكفاءات وتميز الأداء وبناء القدرات وكسب التأييد واستقطاب المتطوعين ليكون العمل في منظمات المجتمع المدني لائقاً ونامياً اقتصادياً؟ أجد أن المنطقية هي قرار اختيار ما يكفل التمكين والاستدامة وما يأمله العالم من تنمية، يبدأ من خلال منهجية بروتوكولات دولية تعمل على دعم المنظمات رفيعة المستوى ذات الأهداف العالمية والوطنية والاهتمامات المجتمعية، والاعتراف بجهودها لهذا التوجه وللاتفاقيات المكتوبة وربطها بالأدوار والمسؤوليات التي تتواءم معها. السيد الرئيس، الإخوة والأخوات الكرام، أقترح أن يتم دفع عجلة التغيير نحو الاستدامة الفردية والمؤسسية عن طريق آلية تعمل في ذات الاتجاهات مع البيانات الرسمية من خلال مسارات: 1. فكرية لصناعة منهج علمي تنموي مستدام يرتكز على المبادئ والقيم النبيلة وينتهي بالتدريب والاعتماد بهدف كسب الموارد والاستدامة. 2. معنوية للاهتمام بطاقات ومهارات أعضاء المنظمات ومتطوعيها واستثمارهم في التدريب الممنهج ومنحهم شهادات التخصص التنموي المستدام. 3. مادية لمنح المنظمات مميزة الأداء ميزانية خاصة تعمل على تطوير البحوث والدراسات العلمية لتكون مرجع استشاري وتطبيقي. 4. تطويري لتحقيق الاستفادة والتطوير للمنظمات الأخرى وتسليط الضوء على ما يقوم به زملاء سعف المحترفين في غرب آسيا في مجال التوجيه والإرشاد للمعايير البيئية. 5. رقمية لقياس أثر الجائحة على منظومة الصحة والتعليم والاستدامة المالية من خلال قاعدة بيانات ومعلومات. 6. مستدامة لتمكين المنظمات رفيعة المستوى من ريادة الصناديق الاستثمارية وتشييد الأبنية الخضراء ذات المعايير التنموية المستدامة. السيد الرئيس، الأخوة والأخوات الكرام، في الختام إن الصوت الصادق لسد الفجوة بين التمكين والاستدامة يتطلب 3 أمور. أولاً الاستماع بمزيد من الجدية للمنظمات المعتمدة بالمجتمعات الدولية حتى لا تكون خلف الرقب. 2. الإدراك بأهمية منهجية العلم والمعرفة ذات الأهداف السامية والقيم النبيلة وما تمنحه من قوة تأثير لا منازع لها. 3. الاهتمام بنماذج البناء وإعادة إيكولوجية الأراضي وأثرها على صياغة التحول التنموي فكرياً وسلوكياً حتى ينعم الإنسان بالازدهار وجودة الحياة. شكراً لكم.
شكرا جزيلا أستاذة ماجدة القاضي. And now, ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker will help disseminate the information which is in favor of sustainable recovery to the society. The popularity could be an important point for the next stage of recovery. Ms. Jiashan Ding is a Saudi Green Building Forum UN volunteer and a student of chemical engineering. Ms. Ding, please go ahead.
Thank you very much for inviting me to show my perspectives about the sustainable recovery during the pandemic. And good evening from China. Now I will start. In order to recover from the world-changing events, it has been pointed out that economic, social, and environmental aspects are linking together to be the key point for driving the society back on track. According to other countries' green recovery policy, like the UK, we can learn that climate mitigation could be a side benefit of resilience-focused recovery strategies, so that better social resilience can be enhanced to respond for future crises. In green recovery, health and well-being across public will reduce vulnerability to similar pandemics. With a certain amount of fee supported to industry emission, a strong clean economic recovery could be achieved with creating more green-collar jobs. In addition, the sustainable development for achieving less poverty could be achieved by improving the education quality during the pandemic, like supporting digital devices and provide network assistance. As sometimes in rural areas, people may get less chance to access the online education by comparing to the urban people, which may also lead to an increase in the gap of wealth. Furthermore, I think it is significant to keep the fee related to the COVID-19 treatments and precaution law to the level of everyone could endure, so that the number of families which cannot afford the excessive medical fees could reduce. Here, I suggest to support more financial aid to families with more children taken care with, so that the economic burden for the most basic needs of families could be satisfied. It should be mentioned that people are much more willing to procreate after the pandemic, which is useful to a further step of developing the gross domestic product. Finally, the popularity from public could be an important point for the next stage of recovery. I think public participation with recovery more democratic process will make more effective policy and motivate the public willing. Advertisement with political propaganda for producing is significant, and sometimes the media can impress people more by comparing to the simple work. To help disseminate the information and suggestion, which is in favor of sustainable recovery to the society. Thank you very much for everyone joining us today.
Thank you indeed, Mrs. Ding. And COVID is an unprecedented crisis that hit the world and transformed drastically the way we live, work together, and do business. It is now essential to embrace the paradigm shift towards a new reality. Our speaker is Ms. Ambri Najia, and she's a writer and storyteller and singer. She's the founder and chairman of the Sparklink Agency, a multi-award winning consultancy specialized in designing sustainable business models. Ms. Ambri, 3 minutes, please go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. Is everyone hearing me fine? Perfect. There's a bit of delay because I'm in Tunisia and the network is not really strong. I hope you all will get the message properly from my end. So I was already introduced, and thank you very much, Mr. Faisal, for the opportunity and the Saudi Green Forum. I'm very proud to be here today. As a person, I'm also part of the B20 for a question around the women empowerment and employment and education, where I met Mr. Faisal. I was invited today to talk about how we can envision a new way of doing business after the COVID, and this time not necessarily based on the usual thoughts and the usual way that we do business. Usually when we want to do business, we always think about business models and business plans. And at the end, we can find that it's not really working properly today. That's why there is this shift that we are trying to make from the third to the fourth industrial revolution. However, most of us do not really understand the links between sustainability, the new business models, empowerment, and this kind of things. They are all interrelated in certain ways. So sustainability is actually the way to make things move forward. However, they are not based from the usual approach that was from top to bottom. And we developed a couple of initiatives around empowerment with youth in the Emirates, United Arab Emirates, in Tunisia, and in France. And we noticed that the Sustainable Development Goals would be only, we will be only able to achieve them if we think from bottom up. So we actually empowered youth to create their own opportunities for growth. In this way, we made them meet a couple of leaders from different countries, military leaders. We had them meet the Minister of Tolerance in the UAE. We had them work on sustainable models to make business. And I think when we are talking about how to achieve job security and how to achieve like a security in general, I think we should also understand that we should change our mindset. Jobs are actually disappearing because they are becoming more technological and more project oriented. We should actually think that most of us would shift from just a job to entrepreneurship. I know we are all not going to be entrepreneurs, but what is an entrepreneur is actually someone that has the chance to try. And this is what we need to create to move to this fourth industrial revolution. The fourth industrial revolution is not technological, it is actually human based, it is human centered. We talk a lot about human centered design, and this is it. So the main shift is actually to start thinking about humans first and how they navigate, so we can actually comprehend change around them and the way that they consume, the way that they behave, and we will comprehend better how we are going to have this fourth industrial revolution. Apart from this, I would like to say something quickly about the shift from a business model that was mainly insecure. So most businesses are always based on this fear of not having enough clients, of projections and uncertainties. And now we are actually moving towards models that are more secure. And how is that? For example, by creating groups of economic interest. We see a lot of them arising in Europe and more in the Middle East. In America, it's quite common. And even in Tunisia, we start having them. And they are actually supported by entities like the GIZ and the World Bank because they create safer ways of doing business. Apart from this, I would like to say that now this shift towards a sustainable model is actually understanding also the power of communities. We always think that a community is maybe a threat to the powers in place, but they are not. Communities are actually the safest place to have people be empowered, to have people develop their own business opportunities, and at the same time to have enough business intelligence for other businesses to buy from the communities. So they would be actually the best way of advocacy for moving towards this fourth industrial revolution. Last but not least, we always talk about generations, and I have seen amazing thoughts and ideas from the Generation Z. I would like to say that I have great hopes in our future because I know that sustainability is not going to happen if we don't give a chance to Generation Z to prove what they have in their guts, in their brains, and their great power of seeing new patterns and new ways of doing things that we could not even imagine or comprehend. We have accompanied more than 300 youth, and the Sparkling Agency actually that I represent got an award for the work that they did with the Emirati youth. And I would like to say that all the youth that are here present and all the youth that are around the world, I would like to send a great message of peace. And I would like you to support us to get to this fourth industrial revolution, to this new way of doing business that is more secure. And thank you again for your attention. I hope I was clear, and I tried to put all my ideas in 3 minutes, which is very challenging. Thank you very much.
Thank you indeed, Ms. Amber. Mr. Chair, we have some questions from the audience. We have an interesting one actually. How will you empower youth and women in KSA based on SDG 14, which is fisheries?
First of all, it's a brilliant question, but before we get to the answer of the question, I would like to just conclude on the session, the session that belonged to the Sustainable Resilience Recovery from COVID-19, which is the sustainability future of us. And this really, the session is really all about the future. And I think it was very obvious that the speakers have spoke of the importance of the civil society as a unit to be the frontiers to, to all the challenges that have been the whole world been faced to. And also really the idea of the priority for the next step for recovery. I think this is one of the things that we need to work on a long term. I really like what Ambry, and I really agree with her on a lot of issues, that there is no secret that we are in the G20 for Italy women, and really seeing the world moving forward. And I think women, youth, and elderly or indigenous people, they are the heart of everything we do. I think it's very obvious that 17 goals, it's impossible to be achieved without the human side. Now, addressing the goal number 14, it's not our HLPF this year to be a part of the negotiation, but definitely 14 needs to have needs to be looked at from a very professional point of view. That all the coastal, you can imagine Earth, and you can imagine how many countries they have a ocean front. And now the ocean front and the erosion of this manned shifting between water and land, it has been really challenging. Now putting that in a midst with women, and some women live by the beach, for example, or they have challenges, or in islands, and we know a lot of countries that in islands. For them to achieve the 17 goals is very difficult. So number 14 is really more of a land first-class resilience going forward beyond the post-COVID. I hope I covered that question well. So do you? Sure. Back to you.
Does green building mean only buildings?
I know this is like a $1 million question. Yes. We've been asked about it a lot, and really from a linguistic point of view, if we can discuss this a little bit, there's a big difference between the word building and a building with S. Building, to me, it's building society, building self-esteem, building the spirit, building the human resources, building everything that emotional and also physical, such as building your own house, your own city, your own country or city. But really, when you look at green building as a mission that aligned with the 17 goals, it becomes very important today that we can't look at buildings or cities just in isolation from the actual mission of the 17 goals. And I think earlier we looked at the project of Restore, for example. Restore is a great project because it really looks at land and how land could be restored in a fashion that not only just rebuilding for the sake of rebuilding and for prosperity, but actually looking at protecting the own land that we all need to go beyond post COVID-19.
I believe Ms. Clara would like to add to that. Ms. Clara, go ahead.
No, just to completely confirm what has been said previously. We see restoration as this incredible tool, not only for the global challenges that we face, but also those local ones. And we really hope that restoration can be a piece of those local resilience solutions. And so that can be integrated into an urban context. I think we often think about it in a very, wild, remote context, but restoration can happen in the built environment as well. So it's a solution that we hope to be a part of from a tools perspective. And, I know many here are also bringing other tools to the table. So I think it's all about bringing that together in a constructive, collaborative way.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you indeed. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, I think, Co-Chair, I think it's, what's nice about all of this is going on, that leaving no one behind. I mean, today we have tools, and we talk about intelligence in my introduction, that data, it becomes have and have not. There will be people that have data and people have no data. And I think today with the COVID, with everything is going on, with tools, again, such as Restore, such as, I know we're working with other groups, developing also the SDGs on the goal 12, which is consumption and production. And not knowing really the value chain and knowing where the product comes and where it ends, it becomes very important. So the data intelligence is really the future. And that's why we love to engage with scientists such as Ms. Clara and others that really look into this as a driving tool to see whether or not we can actually achieve it. And I think one of the major achievements for humankind is the 17 goals that actually, like one of the speakers earlier said, that it's interrelating, it's engaging, and it's really 169 mission with 242 indicators. So in the end of the day, it's not only an SDG, it's not only just a global, obscure position, but it's actually it's an indicator that you can actually measure and present and promote in a way. So thank you.
Thank you. Any final words, Chairperson, before we close this forum?
Well, I really want to really thank everybody. I think it's very obvious we have so many champions, and we try to make really sure that we have across we have the scientists, we have the women, we have the youth, we have the Saudis, we have the Arab. We've got just about everybody, and I think that's a really a cross section of how our Earth needs all of us to move forward. And I think to conclude and to thank you, obviously, Mr. Osama, and all the honorable guests today, and everybody who's around the world watching us. Thank you for your support. Thank you for keeping up with us. And also the HLPF, it is the other side of the coin. The SDGs would never be possible without actually having HLPF, that for every year that we look and observe what member states as well as NGOs and all the community contributing to Mother Earth. So thank you very much again.
Thank you indeed, Chairperson, and thank you, dear panelists, and thank you, our valued audience, for joining us in this forum, and we look forward to hosting you soon in many other successful events. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Goodbye. Thank you.